Hey guys, welcome back to the 72 DPI YouTube channel. Today we're going to be learning to play Quirky Circuits. This is a game that was designed by Nikki Valens and published by Plaid Hat Games. This is a really cool kind of like, I don't want to call it a storybook game, but the game board is in a book, so I guess I would consider it that in that aspect a storybook game. So you take on the role of one of the four mini robots here throughout the entire campaign. There's several different pages in this book, and each different page has a different scenario with a different goal that your little robot friend here is trying to complete. There's some general rules, and then each individual story or campaign, as you will, has different goals, like I said, and different rules and stuff like that. So let's go ahead and get into the game itself. Starting with the first chapter, which is on page 2 here. The game designer says to go ahead and start at the beginning and then work your way through in chronological order because they introduce more and more rules and more game aspects as the book progresses. So that's where we'll be starting. We will be just covering the first chapter here, so there won't be any spoilers or anything like that, but this will set you up for how to continue playing going forward. So the overall setup is pretty straightforward. You're going to grab the book here, open it up to page 2, so you'll have like the information on the left-hand side about the specifics for this campaign, and then a map on the right side. You're going to grab the blue cards. These are like the standard cards for your character that you're playing as. So we're playing as Gizmo. This is the little iRobot sweeper vacuum with the cat on top. So you're going to grab those. Keep in mind, there are some yellow cards. These are the advanced cards. You're not going to be playing with these, so you can tuck those back in the box for a later campaign. So you'll give the cards a good shuffle, and depending on the number of players, dictates how many cards you hand out. So in a 2-player game, each player is going to get 5 of the cards. In 3 and 4 players, each person is going to get 4 cards. You will then go ahead and take the battery token, and you're going to place that at the topmost point here on the right hand side where it's got the battery indicator. So in this case, it's going to be 7. And then you want to make sure that you have your tile here on the Gizmo side. It gives you some instructions on what happens with Gizmo in certain situations. So for example, this says when Gizmo collides with an obstacle or barrier, it halts its movement and rotates to the left. So you want to keep that out as a reminder as to what happens when he actually moves. You're going to place your minifigure with Gizmo on the board here. There is a arrow indicated. That's where he's going to start. And you are pretty much set up for the first game. So we'll set up for a 2-player game here. So each player will get 5 cards. And then you'll keep this extra cards here in a stack. And as far as the actual story scenario goes, it says clean up all the dust bunnies with Gizmo and return it to the arrow right here space before its battery reaches 0. So battery goes all the way down here. So the basic premise is complete the task that the scenario gives you before you reach 0. All players playing, this is a cooperative game, so everybody's playing together, so you all win together or you all lose together. Once the only way you can lose is once the battery hits 0, everybody loses. And then the only way to win is to complete the goal for this particular scenario. So let's talk about this specific scenario right now. So the setup here includes place a dust bunny token, which is one of these little circle tokens here. It's got a picture, an illustration of a dust bunny on it. You place a dust bunny token on each of the indicated spaces. When Gizmo moves onto or through a space with a dust bunny token, discard that token. So you just place these tokens all on the indicated spaces here. So it looks like we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we have 8. So the object of the game is to pick up all the dust bunnies and get back to this space before the battery hits 0. It's got some environmental effects. So obstacles are outlined in a solid yellow line. Robots cannot move onto or through obstacles. When a robot collides with an obstacle, it halts its movement. So keep in mind, you've got some yellow outlines here around the dresser, the bed. It looks like a computer desk, and then also looks like some type of table. So if, for example, you were to bump into this table, he would halt his movement. So he wouldn't be able to move further through this table, he would halt. Now, since we're using Gizmo, the actual Gizmo token card here says he would rotate to the left. So he would bump here and then he would rotate counterclockwise. So anytime he would hit any obstacle, and then there's also the barrier goes all the way around the room. So if he would run into a solid wall, he would still do the same thing and rotate to the left. So now that we have our game set up, barriers, again, those are the represented by white lines. We just talked about those. It's the same type. It halts movement when it bumps into it. And then in Gizmo's case, it rotates to the left. Okay, so that's the game setup. It's pretty straightforward, pretty easy. Each of these scenarios will have the same general setup as far as the cards are concerned, the actual token, and then the battery. That's all the same throughout the entire campaigns listed in here in the book. And then any specific goals or setup for that one campaign will be listed on the left page with the map being on the right. Any special environmental effects will be listed here. Those do get a little bit tricky the further on you go, so always make sure that you're keeping an eye on those specific instructions as well as what's going on with the player tile. So let's move into the phases of the actual game itself. So Quirky Circuits is broken up into 3 phases. It's the program phase is first, followed by the execute phase, and then last is the reset phase. So let's go ahead and talk about the program phase first. So in Quirky Circuits, you are going to be issuing commands to the Mini here to navigate around the actual board itself, and you do so by using these cards. There's a minimum, so there is a minimum amount of cards that can be played. So there has to be at least 5 cards given to a command during this phase, and it can be any number from either player or any number of players. Each player has to play at least 1. Now you're supposed to keep these cards secretive from your counterparts. But the good news is on the back side of them, it gives them a little bit of information as to what is going on that card. So for example, you've got 2 different cards here. So you have, on the back, you have these kind of up and down arrows, and then on the back of this one, you kind of have these like rotation arrows. So if you flip them over, the up and down arrows indicate that this is a movement card that's going to either push the Mini forward or backwards. And then likewise, the arrow cards are going to signify a card that turns the actual character. Now, it doesn't tell you which way it's turning until they flip it over. This is going to be the side that faces you, the player. So when you're playing a card, you place it face down next to the deck of cards. And then you just continue playing cards. Players can play any number of cards. They can play all the cards in their hands if they want to. There just has to be a minimum of 5 orders given in one round, and each player has to contribute at least 1 card. You will gain all your cards back at the end of the next round, so don't worry about holding on to things. If you want to keep them, don't worry about holding them, you'll get them back eventually. So let's go ahead and throw down a couple cards here. So we've got 5 cards laid down here during the program phase, and there should be noted that you can't switch any of the cards once they're laid down. They are laid down in that order. You can't change them or anything like that. You're really not supposed to discuss, how much movement or what movement or anything like that. This can prove to be a little difficult because you don't know exactly where you're going, but that's part of the fun. So once all the cards have been laid down and no one else wants to play anymore, you go ahead and move on to the execute phase. And this is where you take all of your cards and one by one flip them over and follow the steps on the actual card itself. So for example, this card we're going to flip over and it tells us to move Gizmo forward 2 spaces, indicated down here on the bottom, as well as how many arrows are on the actual card itself. So Gizmo will move 1, 2, and the rules tell us that if he moves onto or through any dust bunnies, they get discarded. So that was that one, and then we're going to move on to the next card. So this is going to rotate him clockwise, so he's going to turn to the right. And then this card is going to flip over, and we've got a halt action here. So this card tells us to move forward 2 spaces. However, he's going to bump into the wall here, illustrated by the white line, which will tell us once he's halted, Gizmo will rotate to the left 1 space, just like that. The next card here, we're going to flip that over. This is going to tell us to go forward 1 space. So Gizmo will go forward 1 space. Now, since he didn't actually bump into the wall, he'll continue to face forward here. Doesn't actually bump into the wall until he actually moves 1 more space. So, for example, had this been this card, so like if these cards were flip-flopped, he would have bumped into that space and then rotated towards me. So, going back to our game board here, flip the last card over, and it looks like Gizmo is going to bump into the wall and then rotate to the left. So as you can tell, you can use the rotate ability, the halt and rotate ability, to your advantage. The main challenge here is making sure that you can get him through all these different places and crevices to get all these dust bunnies and then get back before the battery runs out. So now that we've completed the execute phase, this is moving us on to the reset phase. So basically what you'll do is you'll take all the cards that were played that round, you will shuffle them up, and then they go to the bottom of the deck of cards that hasn't been used yet. You will go ahead and then fill everyone's hand back up to the starting total. So for our case, it will be 5. So that player played 2 cards, so we get them, or played 2 cards, so we give them 2, and then I played 3, so we go back up to 5 each, and then you move the battery token down 1 space. Again, once you hit 0, the game has ended if you haven't reached the finish point. So you are at the end of the round, and at this point you basically would just move back to the program phase, and that would start with playing out 5 cards. Alright guys, so that's going to do it for this Learn to Play. Make sure you get subscribed to the channel for more videos like this one, as well as unboxing and game reviews that we do on the channel. Leave a like on the video if you would. If you enjoyed it, make sure you leave a comment down below. And as always, thank you so much for watching. We'll see you in the next video. Thanks.